All right, so today we are doing section 2.7, function operations. Function operations means things we can do to functions. Now you'll notice we have three of them, right? We can subtract them, we can add them, we can multiply them, but the division portion is not included because that one requires a lot more restrictions. So they always tell us just make sure they know how to add, subtract, and multiply, okay? So the thing I'm showing you right there on numbers 1, 2, and 3 is how you might see it. So if they want you to do f of x minus g of x, they might say, well, that's the same as writing f minus g of x. Okay, so this part right here, it means the same thing as subtracting f of x minus g of x. Okay, instead of writing f of x plus g of x, they might just write f plus g of x. Okay, so look for that because it just depends on how they want to put it in a book, how they want to put it on a test. They mean the same thing. And then the multiplication of f of x times g of x, they might just do f times g of x. Okay, so notice how that parenthesis x is still at the end. So they're saying of a function x, so of x. But you're either subtracting, adding, or multiplying. Okay, so just look for the notation. If you see two things being subtracted, f minus g of x, that just means subtract the two functions, f of x minus g of x. If you see f plus g of x, that just means add the functions, f of x plus g of x. And the last one, f times g of x, that's f of x times g of x. Okay, but that's basically the hard part of it is the translating. But from there, if you hopefully do know and remember how to do your like terms and stuff like that, then the rest should be pretty easy. So let me show you what this looks like. We only got 4 examples, okay? So example number 1 says h of n is n plus 4, g of n is negative 4n minus 4. Find h plus g of n. Okay, so they want us to find h plus g of n. Now, h plus g of n basically means we're going to get h of n and we're going to add g of n. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rewrite it just so that we know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, remember, sometimes they might write it like the way I did it in red. Okay, and that's good. If that's what they did, that means you have to do less translating. But if they wrote it like they did in this problem, h plus g of n, I would recommend you just rewrite it into what they mean. H of n plus g of n. Once you do that, you're going to want to write your functions h of n and g of n the way they were given to us. So h of n is n plus 4, so I'm going to put that in a parenthesis, plus g of n is negative 4n minus 4. At that point, I'm going to add these two things together, but I do want to remind you guys that the middle term right here does have to be distributed, okay? But the nice thing about a plus sign in the middle is that it doesn't change any signs. It just keeps them the same. Now, when there's a minus sign in the middle, that can do stuff. That can change signs, okay? But right now, a plus sign doesn't do anything. This is just going to be n plus 4 minus 4n minus 4. Now just combine like terms and we're done. That's it. So n minus 4n is negative 3n. And 4 minus 4 is 0. So here's your answer to this problem. Okay? Now there might be a time later on where they might ask us to plug in a number, but for now we're just going to leave it like this. All right, so hopefully when you see this, you're like, okay, that's not terribly difficult. Okay, but it's very straightforward. The hardest part, I think, is translating the functions into what they mean, right? So h plus g of n really means h of n plus g of n. To me, that's really the hardest part, because after that, once I put the equations in, I don't struggle with the algebra part, so it's not that difficult to do. But making sure I know what to translate it as, right? Addition of two functions, that might be the toughest part. But I don't really even think that's that serious. But it just depends. Everyone's a little different. So I have g of x and f of x, okay? And they want me to find g of x minus f of x. Now you'll notice they didn't write it g minus f of x. And that's okay if they didn't, all right? if they didn't write it the way they have it in function notation, that's fine. Just take it for what it is. Now, if they did write it in function notation, like the operation, g minus f of x, then I'm going to want to rewrite it into what it looks like right here, g of x minus f of x. That way it makes it easier for my brain to understand what's going on. So, g of x minus f of x. So g of x is negative 4x minus 4, minus f of x is x minus 5. Now here, that minus is really important. Inside of that, in between those two functions, this minus symbol is going to change signs here. That x minus 5 is going to change into a minus x plus 5, right? Because that negative will affect it. So I'm going to write negative 4x minus 4 minus x plus 5. Again, that negative gets distributed inside of the second function, and it changes the sign. Now, 4x minus x, that's going to be a 3x. Negative 4 plus 5 is a positive 1, and we're done.
Would be a negative 5x, right?
Hold on, let me check something really quick. You're asking me why did the x turn negative?
It should be negative 5x.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Thank you. So I'll write that down right now. Yes, this should be a negative 5x. I didn't see my own minus sign. So, 1 second. Yeah, when I was looking over to the side of the screen, I didn't see the minus in front of that 4x. When I looked really quick, I saw 4x minus x, so I subtracted it. I got 3x. But yeah, there was a negative 4x in the front, and negative 4x minus x would be a negative 5x. So thank you for that. And negative 4 plus 5 is a positive. Okay? So, are we okay with this so far? Adding and subtracting, right? Again, you can see it. Making mistakes is a normal thing, right? Hopefully you catch them. But just kind of take your time with them. That's why I always tell you guys, don't rush when you're taking your quizzes. There's no prize for finishing first, right? Just take your time. All right, so we've done an addition problem. We've done a subtraction problem. So obviously we need to do a multiplication problem. So here it is. Here's your multiplication problem. So g of n is equal to 4n plus 2. H of n is equal to n minus 5. Find g times h of n. So g of n is 4n plus 2. H of n is n minus 5. Find g times h of n. So since it is written in that function operation notation, I'm just going to rewrite it. G of n times h of n. Now I know g of n is 4n plus 2. And I know that h of n is n minus 5. And they're being multiplied. So I'm going to have to multiply this by using distribution, or if you want to call it FOIL, whatever you want. So 4n times n, that's 4n squared. 4n times negative 5, that's negative 20n. 2 times n is a positive 2n. And 2 times negative 5, that's a negative 10. Okay, all I did was this. I multiplied here and there. Okay, and then also the 2 to those two places. Right, we just call that distribution. Or some people call it FOIL, like first, outer, inner, last, right? So putting everything together, I get 4n squared. Negative 20n plus 2n is negative 18n. And then I get a minus 10. So there you go. So again, all you're doing is adding and subtracting and multiplying these functions. You're simplifying as much as possible. And the only thing that they might make you do different is to tell you, okay, plug in a number. Okay? But actually, when they tell you to plug in a number, I think this actually gets easier. And you'll see right now what I mean. Okay? So I think the first 3 examples are like the hardest ones that you'll probably do. Are we okay with this one? All right, so here we go. So for this one, they want me to do g minus f, but they say of -8. Okay, so they want g minus f of -8. So what I know I have to do g of -8 and f of -8, right? Because if it was g minus f of n, I would write g of n minus f of n. But they want me to plug in a -8. So for me, this is going to turn into this. And right now, I'll just give you a little bit of time to write this out. But I just want to show you guys what they're actually asking me to do. They want me to put a -8 into g, and they want me to plug in a -8 into f. So I'm going to do that first before I even start putting the functions in or anything like that. I'm going to figure out what is g of -8 and what is f of -8. Right? And once I know those answers, then I'll replace my statements there. So I'm going to change my ink here. I'm going to do a little bit of scratch work, okay? So just so you know, like this is me just kind of working on the side. You don't have to write the word scratch work if you don't want to. It's just for the note purposes. So first I want to find g of -8. So g of -8, that's going to be -4 times -8 plus 3. Now remember, we were using this notation in the previous section, function notation, right? We were finding like f of 3 and g of 14 or whatever. We're plugging it in. All right. This is -4 times -8. That's a positive 32 plus 3. So that's 35. So I'm going to highlight that really quick just so that I know. That's one of the answers. G of -8 is 35. Now let me find f of -8. So f of -8 is 3 times -8 plus 3. Right? Because it's 3n plus 3. So 3 times -8 plus 3. 3 times -8 is -24 plus 3. So -24 plus 3 is -21. I'm going to highlight that really quick just so I know that's another one of my answers. So back to the part that's in red. They said, what is g of -8? Well, that's 35 minus, what's f of -8? -21. Now this one's kind of tricky because if you don't pay attention, you're subtracting a negative, right? So that's actually a positive. So this is going to be 35 plus 21. So that's going to be 56. Now remember, I told you guys, I think these are easier to do, but they actually do require more work because you have to plug stuff in, right? It requires more work than the other ones, but to me, I'd rather work with the numbers instead of the expressions. I think I make less mistakes that way. So for me, I prefer this. Whenever they ask me to plug in a number, I'll just do the work, plug in the number first for each function, and then I'll do what they want me to do. Subtract, add, multiply, whatever they want, I'll do that, okay? So that's basically what you guys are doing for homework. I don't think it's overwhelming. There are a lot of problems. They want you guys to practice on this a lot, but I don't think they're too terrible. So let me go ahead and stop the video. Like you see, it's only going to be like 14 minutes, so this lesson is not very long at all. Let me give you guys your homework.